everybody. Today I would like to talk about DNA activation. For this last couple of years I've been talking about DNA activation in a way that everybody can understand the benefits of it. But I think it is time to get a little bit more direct about why, a little bit more metaphysic about the reasons of why DNA activation is important and why it's necessary for your evolution as a human, as a race, as a spiritual being, as something even beyond your existing form. Because DNA activation is something that promotes elevation of consciousness, but not only of the physical form, but of our spiritual form also. So I would like to share a little bit about my experience with DNA activation and how it happened. In my case, I didn't have the luck of having information and following a process before it happened. It happened to me spontaneously. I didn't understand it at first. I just started feeling all these kind of symptoms, like fast heartbeat. My eyesight became very sensitive, and the light would really bother me a lot. That's why sometimes you see me blinking. Light is something that really I became very sensitive to. Also, your mental processes. My mental processes totally changed. The way that I see things, the way that I perceive things, the way I feel about other people, the way I feel about things, nature, animals. Everything changed from the moment of DNA activation. And as a consequence of that, I was able to connect to higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of the universal mind, where I can access information anytime that I need. So instead of me having to read or study in some institution and accumulate knowledge to apply something, I simply connect to the source whenever I need to do anything I need at the moment, to access any information that I need, to get the answer for any question that I might have about me or about anybody else. And that's how we go about in our sessions. Whenever you come to me and you need to know why you're going through some situation, I can connect to the source and I can see why are you going through the situation, because the information is available there. But this process of finding out backwards, or going from the end results to the beginning of how did DNA activation happen and why, has been part of my own spiritual path. Finding out why it happened so I can transmit this information to you in a way that you can understand it, because all this process is happening without anyone saying any words. This is just something that is happening in a way that I have to decode, because it's DNA information. It's something that I can feel, it's something that I can experience. I'm in presence of this situation, of these changes, of this evolution that I'm going through. But how do I put it into words that I can share so you can also trigger your own DNA activation? So that has been part of my path, and I think that by now I have a very clear idea of how it worked and how it was possible to get to that point. And more importantly, now I know why it really happened. So I understand from my interaction with elements, from working with the soul reprogramming method, how elements work. They're very interesting because they tell us things. Each element in your body, in your brain, in your soul, they have a function, and they're all perfectly working in conjunction for a system to work or a process to work. Everything is perfectly integrated. There is no division, there is no war, there's no fights there. Everything is perfectly in a harmonious way working. Of course, there are sometimes intruder elements that come from external influences or changes that happen, and everything gets a little bit disrupted. So then we start adapting again to find that harmony. And what we're going through now in a cosmical level, in a macro level, is a shift, an evolutionary shift, change in every system, and every element of the universe is changing. And guess what? We're part of that change. We're within that universe that is changing, transitioning. We're an element of the universe that is changing. So what happens is that the frequencies are here, and they're causing a total chaotic disruption in every single thing, not only in our physical body, but also and principally in at first in the exterior layers in our soul, and before getting to our body, it already caused all these changes in our behavior, in our perception, in our mental stability, and everything that is before the physical body. And then it will, of course, will reach our physical body, because what happens is that these frequencies are here, they're causing disruption in everything, and these changes are imminent, right? You can't compete against evolutionary forces. That's what they're meant to do. They're meant to expand. And the universe is trying to elevate its consciousness by changing the way things work, making certain arrangements in the structure of things so they can perform better and they can be ready for new things and new frequencies and new events that are going to happen at a cosmical level, and everything that is within it needs to also change. So what we can do to proactively adjust, and not only adjust but benefit from these forces rather than rejecting them or fighting with them because we're going to lose that battle, is to emulate the same thing that the universe is doing. Keep in mind the principle of correspondence. As it is above, so below. So if the universe is trying to do something where, whatever it is, elevation of consciousness in this case, what we have to do is the same thing. Elevate our consciousness to emulate the process that the universe is going through so we can communicate, we can interact, and we can absorb this change rather than allowing it to conflict with our systems, because definitely we're not going to win that battle, right? So the process of evolution of consciousness starts and contains DNA activation within it. It goes through many different things have to happen for evolution of consciousness to finally be present, right? To finally, for you to allow this perception of the new consciousness. And there are many things, but we can summarize them, let's say, in 3 important steps. The first one is soul restructuring. That is something that I've been talking about for the last year. And in soul restructuring, we change the structure in which the layers of the soul are right now working, the way they communicate. We reset all the elements that are in the soul, and we release the old ones, and we allow the new elements to come in. This is a combination of releasing emotions, releasing discordant energies, blockages, memories, everything that is not necessary. Everything needs to go out. There's no reason why to continue accumulating those elements in any of the layers of the soul. It's not necessary because the information can be accessed whenever you need it. It's available. You don't need to be keeping ideas and memories and blockages that work as filters. That every time you receive a new impulse or a new frequency comes in contact with you, then you have to go through all those filters to finally operate. It's like if you had too many programs running in the background before you can even respond to an interaction, so you become slow, you become obsolete. You need to let go of all that. So that's what is done in the soul restructuring part of the process of elevation of consciousness. But for that to happen, DNA activation is necessary because that's what activates that process. And the second level, or the second step for the elevation of consciousness, is cellular activation, because once you have gone through the whole layers of the soul, then you can get closer, right, to the physical body, and you can reset the cells. And the cells they work as containers. They're like little envelopes where frequencies are, where programs are, where information is. So if you change the structure of those envelopes, of those cells, then the information that comes in them also could be different. It could be of a higher nature, right? So that's what is done, and also requires DNA activation because it's part of that process. And finally, the third step for elevation of consciousness is elevation of consciousness in itself, because it is an impulse. The elevation of consciousness is an impulse that occurs when everything else that I mentioned kind of is in conjunction and produces that shift. Also, something that happens during DNA activation, or the reason why we need to get to it, is because we're shifting from being a brain impulse-based system to a DNA impulse-based system. So right now, in the lower levels of consciousness, we are basically a passive driver. We're just waiting there, we're just sitting, we're a co-pilot, right? The brain sends us all these kind of chemical impulses and we react. The brain is hungry and then we eat. The brain says we need to do this and then we do, because it releases all these chemicals, and then, oh, I have cravings, oh, I have all these sensorial needs, I have to fulfill this physiological needs because the brain is telling me that. So we become passive and we just, are kind of zombies doing everything that the brain is saying. But when you make the change, when you decide to take control and be more active in that process, then we kind of release the brain from that responsibility, and now it becomes an active function of the DNA. So the DNA is the one that sends the stimulus now to the brain and to the organs to act, and in a different way. Now is the DNA can actually receive information from a higher level and command higher level functions. So you're not now interested in, I want to eat a piece of cake. Now you're interested in, I want to do something about the environment. I'm interested in things that are more elevated, beyond myself, because in this brain stimulus level, then you're only interested in your egotistic needs in yourself. But once you make the change, then you start seeing everything else. It's like if vision was in this way, right? Here you're in the brain stimulus level or in the lowest level, and then your vision starts expanding. Now you realize, oh, wait, there's something else besides me. There's plants, there's animals, there's an environment. And then it keeps expanding. Oh, wait, there's more beyond that. Now there is a cosmos. There is also all these frequencies that come from the universe, and they affect the way I am. They affect the way I perceive things. And then you keep expanding. Oh, I am connected to the universe. I can receive information. I can connect. I am part of the universe. And then once it opens up even more, oh, I am the universe. I am that. But it is a process to get to that level of realization of that you are everything else. So at first, now you're here, right? You're in the level of, I need this, I need to eat, and everything is separate. And that's the level of brain impulse. And that's why we need to make the leap. We need to jump out of that and connect to the DNA impulse level. And once you're there, then there is more control, because DNA is something that is like preset information that you have placed there. And when you have access to it, then you can leave the programs that you have preset there before you came here. So that's the main reason why we should activate the DNA and go from a brain impulse based system to become a DNA impulse system. It doesn't mean that your brain is not going to work anymore. It means that the brain is going to work under the command of the DNA, not on their own command, because then brain starts doing anything it wants. It has power. Remember, brain is an autonomous element, and if you don't put it under control, then the brain can decide one day that it's going to start acting different than what reality commands, and then that's when disease starts, when mental problems start, when your perception of reality is different than the perception of reality of everybody else, then you start having issues. And it is okay to have different perceptions of reality, but in globally, we do have also a general perception, let's say. And then within that, there are levels and degrees of elevation of consciousness where we can perceive different things, right? Well, this is the main reason, and I think that it's important that you know the why, because things have been said, yes, change your behavior, change the way you think about things, let's meditate, it is important. But the reason beyond that is this, to become a system where you are in control of your elements and not the other way around. And that comes in conjunction with other habits and other practices, not only spiritual, but also things that we do in our physical level, what we eat. And I keep saying this because it is important. I have witnessed it in myself. When I changed my diet, it definitely changed the way I can manage my elements. I stopped eating sugar, and it took me about 2 months to start seeing the difference, because sugar wasn't everything, right? And sugar made my brain kind of act in autopilot and do whatever it wanted, and make me feel the cravings, and made me up and down in my mood. And it was really uncomfortable for me to kind of be in control, or impossible, because the brain would be overpowering every time. So I cut sugar, and that completely stopped. But there were other things, obviously, that I had to do. I also decided to stay in a higher level of consciousness all the time, so I decided to not drink alcohol, because that also contains high levels of sugar. Where is the sugar? So eliminate all the foods that contain high levels of sugar. And if you're going to eat sugar, that make it be from complex carbohydrates, not simple carbohydrates. And also, if you're going to eat fruits, try to go for the fruits that are in trees, not in bushes, because there is also important element in the process of osmosis and how fruits or foods eat, or they get their nourishment. And it's not that the ones that are in bushes are not good, but it means that the ones that are in higher or long stem fruits, what they call, they have actually more more elements of the cellulose of plants that feed the DNA. So that's what you need. And I have put together a list of these foods. I'm going to be sharing this with you and as we go, because I know it's a lot of information, but I really want to tell you these things because I really want you to get there. And I will be sharing this information as it comes, so you can incorporate these foods in your diet and see and experience on your own, this change. It really makes a difference. And once you make the change to the DNA impulse level, you no longer have these needs, these cravings, these sensorial impulses needs. So you right now probably are thinking, oh, I don't want to give up on my chocolate cake. But once you're there, you don't even think about it, because that's not even important anymore. There are other things. Now you're worried of, like, how am I going to help these people and understand these new things, or oh, I'm connected to this information. It's so exciting. It's so neat that now I can find my own information. I don't need to ask anyone for directions. I don't need to ask anybody for advice, because I have my own. So the way that the fulfillment that it brings to make you feel that you have everything contained in yourself, it defeats any need for eating an ice cream or drinking a glass of wine or any of those things, or eating meat, because this is a plant-based diet. Of course, it's part of the being in an elevated level of consciousness, to be aware of the process of what your food goes through before you can eat it. So I won't be tired of saying it. Yes, it is important that you follow a plant-based diet, but it is your process, right? You're going through it. And I'm going to teach you, or I will tell you, or share with you everything I can of my experience, and hopefully enlighten your own. And well, very good. I really hope this information helped you. And in the next days, I'm going to be sharing more about this diet and more about the process. And I'm going to be sharing also some other case studies that came in this week that are really interesting, and definitely are going to help you click some buttons here and there and see if you have some similarities. Very good. You can watch any more of these videos at healersofthelight.com/videos, and you can also subscribe to the newsletter to keep getting information about the new classes coming up. Very good. Thank you very much, and see you soon.